Thanks for staying with us here on ABC-7 Extra Sunday. I'm Mark Ross. I'm talking tonight with New Mexico Representative Gabe Vasquez and Ruidoso Mayor Lynn Crawford. Mayor, you touched on this just before the break, but what are some of the steps that the city, or the village rather, needs to take from here to help lessen that flooding danger? You talked about bringing the Mescalero tribe in to cut down some trees to lessen the chance of some wildfires.
Absolutely. Well, the burn scar is on the South Fork, which for those of the folks that don't know our geography here, it's a way up on the mountain range. And most of all that is on the national forest and the tribal lands. And so a lot of that all that burned area is not on village property. And so we're unable to do any thinning if we had the money. So there needs to be money allocated that we can take all that burned, dead, down material off the mountain. Continue to treat the soil, do terracing, do detention ponds, trash racks, so many different measures done on national forest because these events happen on the mountain and it may not even be raining in our community, but by the time we get a 5, 8, 10 or 20-foot wall of water, it comes through our community, and all we can do is prepare to make sure our river channels are dug as deep as they can be, that the culverts are clean, that we have the previous debris from the previous flood the previous day. And we have small floods all the time, which is really nothing. The waterways work, but any debris that's caught, we need to make sure that that's removed. All of this takes additional funding, additional work. And so it gets to a point where, there is enough.
Now, Congressman, is there any type of federal allocation that can be used for what the mayor is asking about? And also I wanted to touch on, does Ruidoso have a flood warning system in place? And if not, could that also be funded?
Thank you, Mark. Well, look, put plain and simple, we need to do a better job of managing our national forests. In the case of the Lincoln National Forest, look, they're operating under a management plan that was approved in 1986. And so as we're talking about adapting to changing weather patterns and changing climate patterns and mitigating the impacts of these wildfires, which we will continue to see, it's not just about the funding, but it's about changing policy in the way that we manage our national forests. It's about protecting not just communities like Ruidoso, but also communities like Cloudcroft, communities like Tiburon, communities in other parts of national forests like Silver City. It's really critical that we here in Congress continue to work on bills like a piece of legislation I co-sponsored called the Fix Our Forest Act, bipartisan legislation that would open up logging and thinning projects and include good neighbor authority so that communities like Mescalero could actually work on national forest lands because they're interested in protecting their own tribal communities as well that are impacted when the national forest experiences these massive wildfires. So first, we need to change the policy. We need to make sure the Lincoln National Forest has an updated management plan that is adaptive to these changing climate conditions so that those projects can be authorized with minimal red tape in the first place. And that's where so much of this gets caught up. There's too much bureaucracy. There's too much red tape in the way that some of our national forests are currently being managed. And I'd say this to taxpayers and to the communities that have to foot the bill for these projects is that the economic damage and the impact that this causes to communities far outweighs the cost that it takes for the national forest to take on some of these projects. And so we need adequate staffing, policy change, and those are things that I'm working on here in Washington, D.C. As far as the emergency response system for Ruidoso, I'll let the mayor comment on that. But I will say that, one of the things I've been championing is making sure that our residents in rural parts across New Mexico and across the country continue to have access to AM radio. There's new cars being built out there today that don't have AM radio as an example, and that may work in big cities, but it doesn't work when you need to get emergency broadcasts out to folks. Certainly, there's the National Weather Services and NOAA that have an important role to play in designating these warnings in the first place, and we need to make sure those agencies are fully staffed. And at the ground level, certainly every opportunity for folks to get that communication in different ways is important. And I'll let the mayor comment on that.
And Mayor, go ahead and tell me your thoughts about the flood warning system for Ruidoso.
Well, I mean, our flood warning system right now is layered. You know, it's just like what the congressman said. We have AM radio, we have the iPods, we have emergency reverse 911, call me Ruido. So all of these things, but it goes through your phone. And so that's another thing. If we lose electricity in certain areas, or our internet, or our phone services, what do you do then? So we have all of our utility vehicles, emergency vehicles, first responders are all outfitted with a PA system so they can drive through the affected or the soon to be affected areas to go over the speaker to let people know. We do have a fire alarm system that has been in the community for years, and that's the issue. We've never had floods like this, well, at least not since the 40s. So we've had fire. So our warning system is geared to evacuation of fire. And so it's set where it goes off completely. We've trained our community that that's an evacuation sound. And so to get in your car and head down the emergency evacuation routes. The problem is during flooding, we're sending those folks right into low-lying areas. So that's why we're telling everybody beforehand in education now to be at high ground, always be listening during this period all the way through September to your local radio stations, paying attention to your, and that's one of the things we've heard is that they've got warning fatigue. When you get a warning on your phone, read it because the verbiage changes. There's a difference between a watch and a warning. We're getting specifics on parts of town now. So it's up to the person, the individual, to pay attention to know what's going on where they're at. Have your eyes to the skies. If you see clouds in the distance, start listening and then be prepared for the rain that'll come because they do come and then the floods recede. Unlike Texas and other areas, we have a burn scar. So no matter how much or how little rain we get, it's magnified. And so just the other big flood, the flood that we got last Tuesday was 3.5 inches of rain in 90 minutes on the burn scars. And that's the devastation that you see on TV. 1 minute you could hop across the river. Even a guy like me just jump back and forth. 15 minutes later, you got a 1,500 square foot home floating down the river. And you can't fathom it when you're looking at it, standing here, even in person. You don't even understand how it's possible. And that's the destruction that it can take.
Mayor, I have one more question before we wrap up our segment here. Are there flood zones in Ruidoso where village councilors could vote to discourage future construction or rebuilding of homes or businesses?
Well, absolutely. And that's already done because we had to put a new floodway and floodplain mapping together. So all those areas are included in it, in building new homes, new buildings, businesses. That's all excluded. And so that's part of a buyback program because we have people that when they built a home there 70 years ago, they were 40, 50 yards from the river. And now with the silt building up in the riverbed, the river widening out after each one of these events, us not having much less the money, the time to dig those out before the next event, we're engulfing people that never were affected before. And so we're trying this buyout program, which is going to be close to $1 billion. And then that will become a conservation space, a green space that will not be built on in my lifetime or yours.
New Mexico Representative Gabe Vasquez, Ruidoso Mayor Lynn Crawford. Gentlemen, thank you very much for spending time with us tonight on ABC-7 Extra Sunday.
Thank you so much.
And when we come back, what the Texas legislature is doing when it comes to future flooding emergencies, plus extra perspective from a member of the National Weather Service team in Santa Teresa. You're watching ABC-7 Extra Sunday.